A tiny engine shop in Alabama is given a shot at the impossible. Build an aircraft engine light enough for a personal airplane, tough enough to survive decades of hard use, simple enough for a farmer to overhaul in a barn. They built it, and for 50 years it worked. Today, the company that powered 200,000 American aircraft, including the Cessna in almost every flight school in the country, is owned by a Chinese state-run aerospace company. And the fuel those engines require is being banned by law in 4 years. This is how America gave away its most trusted engine without a shot being fired. Aluminum and steel, stamped and cast in Mobile, Alabama. In 1929, the Continental Motors Company spun off its aircraft engine division, betting the future on a 37-horsepower block called the A40. That engine, barely bigger than a lawnmower by today's standards, powered the Piper J2 and J3 Cubs. Its job was simple: make flight possible for people who had never seen an airport. The A40 ran on farm fuel, started with a hand prop, and could be rebuilt on a wooden bench with a set of open-end wrenches. For a decade, it kept the Cub airborne through the Great Depression and into the war years. The A50 followed, bringing a few more horses and a reputation for starting every time, even after a winter spent in a drafty barn. After the war, the Cessna 150 rolled out with the O200, a 4-cylinder, 100-horsepower engine that set the standard for flight training. The O200 was as close to indestructible as anything in aviation. Flight schools ran them to the limit, hour after hour, year after year. The logbooks from those years are thick with oil changes, cylinder swaps, and the kind of field repairs that kept America flying on a shoestring. More than 30,000 O200s left the line, and most are still running somewhere today. Then came the IO520. 6 cylinders, 285 horsepower, fuel injection, and a compression ratio that demanded high-octane avgas. The IO520 powered the Bonanza, the Baron, the Cessna 210, and the 206, the backbone of bush operators, air taxis, and anyone who needed a plane that could haul a load and take a beating. The IO550 pushed the line even further, delivering 300 horsepower and the torque to lift twins off short strips in the Rockies or the Alaskan bush. These engines weren't built for the showroom, they were built for the logbook, for owners who measured reliability in decades, not annual reports. Continental engines became the default heart of American general aviation. Open a flight school log from any year since Eisenhower, and odds are you'll find a Continental-powered Cessna or Piper on the line. The mechanic's handwritten notes, compression check, leak down, oil analysis, tell the same story in every hangar coast to coast. These engines taught America to fly, carried families, hauled freight, and when needed, limped home on partial power with a cracked jug and a prayer. The cold truth is, when the last of these engines is grounded, it won't just be a loss of hardware. It will be the end of a machine that made flight ordinary, affordable, and American. The pride is in the metal and in the hands that kept it turning. Serial number A40001, built in 1929. Continental A40 engine, 37 horsepower. First logbook, Taylor E2 Cub, 1931. Farm gasoline, hand prop start. Overhaul interval not listed. Serial number O200 5001, built in 1962. Continental O200 100 horsepower, used in Cessna 150 and Piper Cherokee. FAA type certificate 1961. More than 30,000 engines produced. Factory time between overhauls 1,600 hours. Overhaul invoice $29,800. February 2024. Oil analysis showed lead within limits. Iron high at 1,450 hours. Serial number IO520D0345, built in 1972. Continental IO520D, 285 horsepower. Installed in Beechcraft Bonanza A36 and Cessna 210. FAA type certificate 1970. Compression ratio 8.5 to 1. Fuel 100 octane leaded avgas. Factory time between overhauls 1,700 hours. Overhaul invoice $67,950, October 2023. 3 cylinders were replaced at a cost of $17,800. Oil results showed elevated lead, copper trace, and the engine was flagged at 1,620 hours. Serial number IO550B0098, built in 1985. Continental IO550B, 300 horsepower. Installed in Beechcraft Baron G58 and Cessna 206. FAA Type Certificate 1984. Compression ratio 8.5 to 1. Fuel 100 LL. Factory time between overhauls 1,700 hours. Overhaul invoice $102,500, December 2024. Camshaft gear was replaced under MSB058B in June 2018 at 1,200 hours. In 1969, Teledyne Incorporated acquired Continental Motors, issuing 4.2 million shares on SEC Form 10K. In December 2010, Teledyne sold Continental to Technify Motor, USA Limited, and AVIC International for $186 million. SEC Form 8K confirms payment in January 2011. Workforce retention commitments kept at least 85% of the Mobile, Alabama workforce for 3 years, and 1,450 of 1,600 employees were retained by June 2011. Current ownership is AVIC International Holding Corporation, 96% Chinese state-controlled, with board chairman Liu Zheng, as disclosed in the 2024 Form 10K FA. A aircraft registration query, fall. 2025 found 175,000 Piston aircraft flying. Annual avgas use is 180 million gallons. Representative engine family includes Continental O200, IO520, IO550, and C90. Sample logbooks show a Cessna 150 with an O200 at 5,200 hours with 5 overhauls since 1964, and a Bonanza A36 with an IO520 at 4,300 hours with 3 overhauls since 1977. FAA Part 33 certification requires 150-hour endurance testing, materials evaluation, emissions, and noise compliance. Certification cost ranges from $10 to $30 million, with timelines of 10 to 20 years. The IO550 was the last major Continental certification in 1984. No new high-performance Continental piston engine has been certified since. In 2017, the Maintenance Service Bulletin MSB058B addressed camshaft gear fractures affecting IO520 and IO550 engines. The FAA issued an Airworthiness Directive 2020-0419 mandating inspections. Reported failure rate is 1 in 2,000. The EPA issued an endangerment finding in 2023. The Eagle Initiative calls for phase out of 100 LL by December 31, 2030. California will ban it starting January 1, 2031. By spring 2026, many fuels are listed as unapproved for IO520 and IO550 engines. Valve seat retrofit costs range from $20,000 to $30,000 for a single engine and $40,000 to $60,000 for a twin. TEL supply is limited to a single US producer and a phase-down is underway. Peak pilot population was 357,000 in 1980. By 2025, the pilot population had fallen to 215,000. The general aviation fleet is shrinking. The engine was built to last. Everything around it wasn't. FAA Part 33 draws a line in the sand. 150 hours of continuous endurance at full power in a calibrated test cell. The engine is chained to the dyno, run until oil and metal reach equilibrium, and every failure is logged, measured, and explained. For the IO550, that test was passed in 1984. The same block, the same metallurgy, the same fuel system. Nothing fundamental has changed since. To certify a new piston engine today, The logbook stretches out over a decade. Advisory Circular 33-2B spells out the steps, including detonation testing, vibration mapping, emissions, noise, materials analysis, and a final teardown with every wear surface measured against the original specification. The bill for this process lands between $10 million and $30 million. The timeline is 10 to 20 years, not counting additional years waiting for FAA review cycles or resolving minor paperwork disputes. The last time Continental put a new high-performance engine through this gauntlet, Ronald Reagan was in office. Every IO 520 and IO 550 running today is a direct descendant of that 1984 type certificate. No clean sheet Continental piston engine has cleared Part 33 since. The economics are simple. Any major redesign, new combustion chamber, new cylinder head, or alternative fuel compatibility triggers a full recertification. The cost makes it a non-starter. The only changes that reach the fleet are incremental: a different ignition harness, a revised cam gear after a failure, a tweak to the fuel servo. The core engine stays locked in time. For the mechanic, the test cell chart is a relic. The 150-hour run proves the engine's bones are sound, but it also proves the cage is real. The certification burden is not a one-time hurdle. It is a permanent wall. That is why the IO 550's logbook still carries a 1984 stamp, and why every overhaul, every AD, every field repair is a negotiation with a standard set 40 years ago. The engine can last. The system around it refuses to move. A fractured camshaft gear sits on the bench, teeth missing, case-hardened steel split clear through. MSB 058B, issued in 2017, covers IO 520 and IO 550 engines built between 1998 and 2009. The failure starts invisible, fatigue at the gear-to-cam interface, 1 in 2,000 by the numbers, but it only takes one. When the gear lets go, cam timing collapses, valves and pistons collide, and the engine seizes. In flight, that's a dead stick. The FAA opened an Airworthiness Directive docket 2020-0419. The draft would have grounded thousands of Bonanzas, Barons, and Cessna twins overnight. Continental pushed back. The final order required inspection, not mass replacement. Still, every owner paid. Downtime, teardown, new gear, and the labor to prove the engine was still airworthy. It is the cost of living inside the cage. Every part, every fix, every hour of compliance stacked on top of a 40-year-old design. Meanwhile, across the ramp, a different story. The Rotax 912 and 915 series power most of the light sport fleet. These engines are not certified under FAA Part 33. Instead, they operate under ASTMF 2339 consensus standards, a regulatory carve-out for light sport aircraft under 14 CFR Section 21.190. There is no 150-hour dyno run. There is no decade-long paperwork cycle. Rotax reaches the market in 2 years, not 20, with a compliance bill measured in the low millions. The result is lighter engines, lower cost, and a stranglehold on every new trainer below 100 horsepower. Continental doesn't compete here. The 0200 is locked behind Part 33, tied to logbooks and inspection cycles that Rotax sidesteps entirely. The cam gear episode exposed the fragility of the old system. The inspection mandate did not just cost money. It handed the competitive edge to a rival that never had to fight the same regulatory war. Continental's core market shrank, not because the metal failed, but because the rules made standing still the only affordable option. The sale contract landed on the bench with a clause in bold that required keeping at least 85% of the mobile Alabama workforce for 3 years. Payroll sheets from 2010 list 440 names. 2 years later, the count was 398. The letter of the deal was met, but the mood in the plant was wary. The machines kept running, but the worry was written in the break room and on the faces at shift change. For the mechanics, the promise was jobs held in place by a timer, not a future. A OPA bulletin called out the risk. The transfer of America's most trusted piston engine brand to a foreign state-controlled entity raises legitimate concerns about technology security, supply chain continuity, and long-term support for U.S. operators. The EAA board minutes were blunt that the sale of Continental to a Chinese aerospace giant undermines confidence in the domestic general aviation engine market. No one in the hangar thought the money would go back into the O200 or the IO520. The talk was about diesel, about Jet A, about the center of gravity shifting overseas. The retention numbers held just above the threshold. Alabama's labor reports tracked the headcount year by year: 380, 410, 398. The jobs stayed, but the sense of ownership didn't. Operators wrote letters asking for parts guarantees, for clarity on support, for answers about what would happen if export controls tightened or if the board in Beijing changed its mind. The answers came back polished but thin. The advocacy groups kept pressing, but the reality was already settling in. The engineering focus was moving, and the American general aviation community was no longer at the center of the map. On the floor, a mechanic held up the headcount sheet, names in black ink, futures in pencil. Diesel brochures started showing up on the shop counter the same year the headcount sheets got thinner. The numbers on the page told the story. After the 2010 sale, capital flowed east, and the engineering budget followed. Within months, the board in Beijing rolled out a new roadmap: Jet A compatibility, advanced diesel, and hybrid electric concepts. The old avgas line was labeled maintenance only. In July 2013, Continental's new owners acquired Teledyne aircraft engines out of bankruptcy. The deal brought the Centurion diesel line into the fold: CD-135, CD-155, CD-170, engines built for European flight schools and Chinese training fleets, running on Jet A, not 100LL. Press releases called it a strategic move, but the shift was clear in the SEC filings: a $42 million goodwill line for Teledyne, a spike in R&D spending for diesel certification, and a $15 million upgrade for new casting lines in Germany. The Mobile plant kept building IO520s and O200s, but the future was being written in another language on another continent. Engineering bandwidth, the people who once solved cam gear failures and detonation margins, got reassigned to diesel projects. Staffing records show a 30% drop in headcount for the legacy Piston group between 2011 and 2015. The diesel line, meanwhile, got the capital, the test cells, and the attention. The American fleet, still tied to 100LL and an aging block, saw only incremental changes: a service bulletin here, a compliance tweak there. The big money was on Jet A, not on keeping the IO550 alive past the 2030 fuel deadline. For the mechanic, the new engine brochures felt like a warning. The logbooks kept filling with O200s and IO520s, but the parts bins started to thin out. The diesel roadmap wasn't about saving the American fleet, it was about building something new somewhere else. EPA Docket 2023 AVLL sits in the inbox. The endangerment finding is now law. The Eagle Initiative sets December 31st, 2030 as the last day for 100LL in the United States. California moves a day further, January 1st, 2031, zero lead by statute. For high compression, Continental engines, the numbers are blunt: IO520, IO550, TSIO520 all require 100-octane avgas to avoid detonation. No universal drop-in replacement is approved. GAMIG 100UL covers about 70% of the fleet, but the 6-cylinder Continentals that burn most of the fuel remain outside the STC list: Swift 100R and Lyondell. Basel 5P are still in test cells waiting for FAA sign-off. Each new fuel candidate means another round of paperwork, another year lost to the certification treadmill. Valve seat retrofit kits are the mechanic's new reality. Shop quotes for a single engine. Cessna 182 with an IO520 run between $20,000 and $30,000. For a twin, Cessna 310 or Baron, double it, $40,000 to $60,000 for 2 engines before the first unleaded gallon can legally enter the tanks. That is just the cylinder work. If the engine is near time between overhauls, add $70,000 for a full overhaul. The math collapses. An owner facing a $60,000 cylinder conversion on a plane worth $200,000 with a $70,000 overhaul looming in 800 hours sees the return on investment evaporate. The STC gap leaves operators in limbo, no approved fuel, no affordable path to compliance, no guarantee the next regulatory update will move the goalposts again. Tetraethyl lead. Supply shrinks in the background. The single US producer is winding down, matching the EPA timeline. Each gallon of 100 LL becomes more expensive, each delivery less certain. The state bans are not hypothetical. California's deadline is written into law. Other states are watching. The shop phone rings with owners asking for options, but the answer is always a cost sheet, parts, labor, downtime, and a line at the bottom that just says, "Not worth it." The fuel squeeze is not coming. It is here. The logbooks tell the story in numbers, but the verdict is written in what is missing. No new engine has been certified since 1984. No universal fuel, no affordable overhaul for the average owner. This is not a single failure. It is a system that let the engine outlive its own support. The FAA built a wall around the product line, 150-hour endurance runs, a decade of paperwork, and a certification bill that makes any leap forward a financial non-starter. The result is a fleet locked to a 40-year-old design, forced to run on a fuel that has been legislated out of existence. Corporate hands did not help. Teledyne kept the lights on, but never saw the piston line as more than a rounding error on a balance sheet. When the numbers stopped adding up, the company was sold overseas. Avic took the cash flow and pointed the engineering toward diesel, toward Jet A, toward the markets that mattered to them. The American fleet was left with a maintenance budget and a parts catalog, no roadmap, no future. Market forces finished the job. The pilot population shrank by nearly half since 1980. Each year, more aircraft leave the registry than join. Owners face a choice: spend $60,000 on a retrofit, $70,000 on an overhaul, or walk away from a machine that once stood for American reliability. The math is simple, and the outcome is written in every empty hangar. Responsibility does not land in one place. The FAA built the cage. Corporate leaders cashed out. The market turned away. The engine did its job. Everything around it failed. If you want a single cause, you will not find it in the metal. You will find it in the logbooks, in the cost sheets, and in the silence that follows a grounded airplane. The Continental engine did not give up. America gave up on the system that was supposed to protect it and sold the rest to Beijing. My job now is to keep it running as long as physics allows. The engine was built to last. Everything around it wasn't. Continental's pistons still run strong when the logbooks are honest and the care is right. But the system that once kept them in the air, with regulation, support, and fuel, collapsed by inches, not by accident. The Continental engine didn't give up. America gave up on the system that was supposed to protect it and sold the rest to Beijing. The mechanic's job now is to keep it flying as long as physics allows.